Welcome to the AngelsWin.com podcast, featuring Geoff Stoddard and AngelsWin.com founder, Chuck Richter. And now, here's Geoff Stoddard.
All right. Happy Thursday, I guess it is, everyone. Welcome to episode 43 of the AngelsWin Podcast. My name is Geoff Stoddard, joined as always by AngelsWin.com founder, Chuck Richter. And today we have a very special guest that we're really excited to talk to. We've been kind of teasing this on X for the last couple of days. So if you follow us there, you're probably teed up for it as well. But for those of you that aren't, let's see. He is an NFL Network analyst on the shows Good Morning Football Weekend, NFL Fantasy Live, and Thursday Night Football First Look. He also writes a column for the NFL Network and is the host of his own podcast, The Sick Podcast with Adam Rank, America's favorite Chicago Bears podcast. He was born in Chicago, raised in Corona, California. He's a graduate of Corona High School and Cal State Fullerton. Go Titans. Please join us in welcoming Adam Rank. Adam, welcome.
Oh my gosh, so excited to be on with you. And I think it was Chuck who reached out first.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I would love to come on and talk some Angels, because it's funny. You mentioned the thing about the Chicago Bears, and I think if you follow me on X or anything like that, most of my content or anything is going to be about the Bears. I was doing a live show from Chicago during the draft, and because I'm a genius, I let one of the drunken fans get on the air and ramble. And the last thing he said, he was leaving, and then he picks up the microphone and he's like, oh yeah, stop talking about the Angels, and then just left. Just disappeared. I'm like, I can't believe the Angels would have such a visceral reaction for anybody in Chicago. We have, we both had Joe Madden as a manager, if you're a Cubs fan, and if you're a White Sox fan, you remember 2005 fondly and think that Doug Eddings is a hero. I do not see it that way, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ed.
So Adam, I think before we kind of dig into the Angels and everything, how did you? What was your first experience, whether going to a game or watching a game? That you found yourself an Angels fan.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if I can't remember if I ever went to Wrigley. So I've never been cognizantly aware of being at Wrigley Field. So growing up in Corona, your only choice was to go to Angel Stadium because my parents were not about to go to see the Dodgers. My parents were Cubs fans, and they would go down to San Diego, which was better for them because they didn't want to go up to LA. And I think if anybody who's aware of this two stadium, well, it was Jack Murphy Stadium at the time, but still, you'd rather go to San Diego than LA, and it's reasonable. I was actually a big baseball fan growing up, and as a lefty, I was always drawn to left-handed players. As a matter of fact, my dad won a big Keno hit one time because we were using numbers, obviously, and I had him select 21, 22, and 23, and obviously for Wally Joyner, Will Clark, and Don Mattingly. So the lefties and all that stuff. And I would say for me, and I grew up going to Angel games and loved it, and Angel Stadium is kind of like my second home. I would say, though, the time that I knew that I was fully invested was staying home in 1995 for the one-game playoff between the Angels and Mariners. And I think, as somebody who grew up loving baseball, and you're kind of like, I could not. That was the first time I remember really being butthurt over an Angels law, really just being like, this is the worst. So I was locked. So from that point, at least, I know I was locked in, but I'd always been a huge baseball fan. But at that point, I was like, I was all about, and I remember that 95, I remember that season, just going to so many games and just remember, and it was when the wild card had started. And I remember a friend of mine, even when D-Star Cena went out, he was kind of like, but we got the wild card. It's not that big a deal. And I'm like, oh, famous last words.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that season was tough for me. But for me, the worst was 86. 16-year-old kid, one strike away. Oh my gosh. We had the entire neighborhood over my parents the year before just got a brand new big screen TV, and we're like, we're going to watch it at Chuck's house because they got a big screen. And we had at least 30 people in our house, and we were all just like this, like ready to go, like one more strike away, one out. And then they gave up the home run, and you could hear a pin drop. It was just like, it was terrible. So, but you know what? Those things that you go through, and of course the 90s, seeing the team just struggle, but like what we're going through this year, you see these kids like the Salmons in those days and Garrett Andersons, and it's kind of nice. I mean, it sucks to lose, but it's kind of nice that we're going back to that model of just, having our own guys come up through the farm system. And so I don't know.
There was too much stress over the last couple of years. Like, we felt like you had to do everything to sort of appease Ohtani and everything. And the funny part of it is like, we really didn't need to. Like, we did, and not in the sense of like, I will die on this hill. I am the meme of the guy standing up in the room. Is all it would have taken was our owner to be like, yeah, right, I'll pay that money. Like, okay, and he would have stayed. 100%. He would have stayed. And it's like, no disrespect to Artie Moreno, but how long do you think you're going to be alive? Do you think you're going to make it a decade? Like, this is not even something that I think you would even have to worry about. Like, if somebody came to me and been like, hey, we're going to give you, $85 billion. You're like, okay, like, but you're going to have to pay it off in 60 years. I'd be like, sold. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to make it there. So let's do it. So I think that was the biggest thing. Like, and, and I don't want to get into it. I listened to you guys and everybody and Victor and all, everybody's covered this at great length, and you don't need me to rehash it, but it's still the same thing of like, why did you keep it? Like, why? Like, if you're upset with the upkeep of a Tesla, then sell the Tesla, especially if the richest guy in your neighborhood's coming in being like, I'll give you $3 billion for that car.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Again, we don't need to rehash all that stuff, but the positive. Cade, Dana's coming up on Sunday. I need to now change my plans. Like, there's a lot of cool things going on. And like you said, Chuck, it's fun. I mean, like, I know that everybody goes out there and they're like, I'm not giving Moreno a dime. Like, well, he's making TV money, so it doesn't matter. I still go. My kids love to go. Yeah. We're going to go on Saturday, go watch some fireworks and have a good time and watch all these youngsters. And it's going to be a good time.
That's awesome.
It's a good thing he's making his debut this Sunday and not next Sunday. We're all going to be a little busy, and we'll get into that later.
Indeed.
Right?
Yeah. Indeed. What first drew you to the Angels as you moved from Chicago? And I don't know how old you were when you moved out from Chicago.
I was young. I was a first grader.
Oh, okay. Wow. What drew you to the Angels as opposed to becoming a Dodgers fan or even a Padres fan?
Well, the parents, I don't think were going to allow me to be a Padres fan, or excuse me, a Dodgers fan. I don't know what the beef was, but my dad just wasn't having it. And we moved out here, and my dad was, he was a Cubs fan, Bears fan he would not give up on. The Bulls were so terrible for years, like it really didn't matter. So, and then he didn't really care about hockey. So it was like, and we would go to Angel games. I mean, like, you eventually, even if you were like, even for the first couple of years of like going to Angels games, I was going to watch baseball. Like, we were here for baseball and whatever. And it's a fun time and whatever. And then you slowly get attached to it. And I see it happen although my kids were immediately off the bat of like, I'm an Angel. Like, my daughter is a diehard Angels fan since day one. She's 9. I took a little bit more meandering because I just enjoyed the sport. I love playing it. And so, like I said, like, even like, I remember 86, I could call, but I was upset, but not like my life has changed, not like 95, not like all of the 2000s.
Yeah.
And so, but it was really one of those things. And then like my dad loved it. And my dad liked going to games, or both my parents liked going to games. My mom was in real estate too, which means she got all the tickets from title brokers or whatever.
Nice.
Yeah. Like, hey, as long as it's not the Yankees, you can have any tickets you want, or the Red Sox.
Exactly.
You can have any tickets you want. Like, okay, we'd go watch the Rangers and do that stuff. And again, like even celebrating baseball, And it wasn't, I didn't play, this is weird because I didn't play fantasy baseball as a kid, but I collected trading cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I was excited to see Pete Incaviglia and Ruben Sierra or any of those guys, like as you would, like, hey, or Ken Griffey Jr., not Alex Rodriguez, but like, hey, you know, you were kind of into that. So, and then eventually, like, this becomes your side. This becomes your squad. You know, you're like, okay, I'm ready to go. Maybe it was because interleague hadn't quite started, because like that was because I don't remember growing up with Dodger fans. Like, we didn't have that problem out in Corona, which was really nice. Like, everybody's locked into the Angels.
Yeah.
Right.
And once 2002 hit, like, there was no going back. Everybody was into it. So, but I just love going, and I love the stadium, and I love the thing, and also going to Cal State Fullerton. Back in the day, you know, the general admission tickets were $3.
Right.
And we used to go, and before the renovation of the stadium, we used to sit in the terrace level that would be right next to the Diamond Club, or the Don Julio Club now. It was aisle 9 back then. And we used to just go and we'd buy the $3 tickets, and then we would just walk in through the terrace level and then just stop in the last row of aisle 9. And we would go so much that we were in high school, you know, whatever, and then college, that people thought that those were our tickets. Like, they just assumed that we were the guys. We owned the tickets for the last row in aisle 9 back in the day. And it was fun. And so then you grow attached and you do that. And so my dad he got into loved the Angels. He was a Lakers fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and I really loved, now the Lakers, because I played a lot of basketball too. I instantly loved the Lakers, but they were super good.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And I remember before my dad passed, I had asked him, I said, listen, you know, it doesn't escape me that you sort of missed out on the whole Jordan thing, because I pulled you into the Lakers.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, he's like, by my math, he's like, I got 5 titles with Magic. I got 5 titles with Kobe. So if it hadn't been for Kobe, I would really be upset with you. But he's like, I came out ahead. I did get out ahead. And he still enjoyed the Air Jordan-ness. I remember him geeking out for the 63-point game against the Celtics there. So he was cool with it. Unfortunately, he didn't make it to 2002. Otherwise, he would have loved that, which is unfortunate. But
yeah. Yeah, I was your neighbor growing up. I was in Riverside.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I grew up in Riverside.
I think I've heard you say that. Yeah.
I was down in Brea, Dana Point, Aliso Viejo, Mission Viejo.
Yeah.
So I was around that area. What I was reading in your bio, I think on the NFL.com or NFL Network website, very funny write-up that they had. I don't know if you did that or somebody there did that, but it made mention that you may have tried to walk on the Cal State Fullerton baseball team. Is that accurate?
That's a very loose interpretation of what was happening.
Was you walking on by walking across the field to go get some?
Do you guys remember? I don't know if you remember Jeff Belau, who used to be
yes.
I know Jeff.
He used to write for us and do a lot of stuff for our website. Yeah.
Right. And we had talked about this one time because he had done something similar during the strike year, where he went up and pitched in front of a scout. And I was kind of like, my parents were making me go to college. They were like, you need to go to college no matter what. My 2 older sisters did not finish school. My one sister was in entertainment, and she was living in New York. And I was like, hey, I kind of want to go do stand-up. And my parents are like, please don't. Like, can one of our kids, like, nobody in my family had ever graduated from college. So they're like, please do this. And I'm like, I'll go to Cal State Fullerton. And which was cool. I guess I know my dad told me later on, he's like, we would have paid for you to go anywhere. But I'm like, nah, whatever. I don't want you to go into debt. It was cheap and it was fun. And so I go, okay. So we go up and I go, well, I played baseball in high school. I'm like, let's see what I got. And it's like, it's really like illuminating, because you feel like you have to be so good. Like, these guys were so good. And it was evident. Like, I'll never front of like, well, if something had happened, if I hadn't, like, nope, I was not good enough. And even the people, and I get really offended by this when people are like, well, I probably could have played D3. I'm like, no, because like the guys who play D3, like go open a program and see those guys' accolades, because it's still like all Sunset League,
Right.
you know, second team all CIF, Trinity League, you know, MB, like no, they're still great players.
Mhm.
So it was an experience. They were having open tryouts, and it was cool about Cal State Fullerton, where they really let you know, where it was like, hey, above average ball player, below average ball player, like, what are you doing out here? Rec league softball. And I was near the bottom, which is fair, because those guys don't miss. Like, it's when you watch the players, because I ended up covering Cal State Fullerton and doing all this stuff, and you watch those guys in batting practice, like they don't miss. They're every bit of contact is on the screws.
Mhm.
So it's like, yeah, it's just another level that I was not going to attain. But hey, it was fun. George Horton saw me field a pop fly, so that was cool.
Nice. Do you think that, you know, having, you know, seen that firsthand in the difficulty of making, you know, a college, you know, baseball team like that, just gives you an extra level of appreciation seeing these guys get promoted and going through the minor leagues and then making it to the big leagues? I mean, to me, I think that you would, and that, like, wow, these guys made it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, because I did work a year of minor league baseball out in San Bernardino, and a Dodgers affiliate, but whatever. That's a dirty secret that rears its head every once in a while, because they'll find, like, my friends of mine will find pictures of me with a Dodgers hat on. Like, yeah, I was getting paid by the Dodgers. I'll throw that hat on. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I have a price.
You know, yeah, apparently I did. It was $9,000 a year was the price to sell out my morals to be a Dodgers guy. It was cool though. Adrian Beltre has sat shotgun in my car because I had to pick him up at the airport one time.
Very
I
cool.
had to bring him in from Savannah to go to San Bernardino to go play some games. But so I always rooted for him. So he's a good guy.
He was a
He's
great
still-
ball player. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is amazing. And we would be out there, and I worked with a guy who played baseball at Santa Barbara, and we would screw around and take, you know, in the cages and everything. And Del Crandall was the manager. It's like, oh, let's see you guys. And so you'd watch this guy's name was Steve. You're like, oh, Steve, like, you can handle yourself. And you're like, hey, Del, how about me? And he's like, nah, like, nah, I'm not as good at him. But I was like, okay. But there is a level of appreciation. And given what I do in the world of fantasy football and everything like that, I still can't believe I talk as much stuff as I do, knowing what I know and how difficult it is to even go from the high school. And I went to a pretty big high school, Corona High, national champions, of course. We were not that good when I was there, but still we were a decent program. But you're like, gosh, like the way it filters out, because they always talk about this. You hear about this in the minors all the time, especially back when there were more single A affiliates, where the funnel from single A to double A can almost be the most difficult of what you're doing. And you think about the guys who don't make it. And I know the year that I was working in San Bernardino, they had an outfielder from Pacific. His name was Chip Sell. And it's one of those things where you remember, like, I remembered him from college. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, Chip Sell. You were the good player at Pacific. You were the one guy who was really good. And he would hit like he hit 320 at every level that he was at, and yet never moved up. Like, was just like stuck. And I'm like, why don't they, like, you can obviously hit, and like, hey, where were you drafted? How much money did they invest in you? There was a kid who played at Chapman. His name was Cliff Anderson. Probably still is Cliff Anderson. And he would go from single A. I know this because I picked him up from the airport all the time. So he would be going from San Bernardino to Albuquerque, and then San Antonio, and then back up to Albuquerque. Then I'd have to pick him up at 11 p.m. from Ontario Airport. And then we would always drive in, and there's an exit off the 215 for a San Bernardino Airport. And the call sign is SBD, which to me, I'm still a 13-year-old at heart. SBD Airport is still the most, but so appropriate for San Bernardino, like more than you would know. And he would always say, why can't I fly into this airport? I'm like, dude, I'm not the travel secretary. Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
It's not me. But I would think about guys like that. And I remember Cliff Anderson playing at Chapman because they were a Division I program for a while. like, gosh dang, that was like a great ball player who never really got a chance. And it's just like, it really strikes you of how good these players are, what they go through, how much work it takes to get to this level. I'll still yell at Joe Adele, but still, I just kind of, I should know better. I don't yell at the Angels players. It was, somebody just mentioned this the other day. Who was the outfielder for the Rangers who blew the route in the World Series against the Cardinals? He was also a Mariner. Oh, why can't I think of his name? Somebody just I teach a course at Chapman, and one of my students mentioned it last night.
Oh,
Vic Cruz. Not Victor Cruz. I got my NFL mixed up.
Oh, I know Well, it's not Jose Cruz Jr., right?
No. But it was the guy who ruined the. He took a bat. He was the guy who allowed the ball to fall, and then Freese hits the home run.
That's Nelson Cruz.
Nelson Cruz.
Yeah.
I always remember sitting in right field roasting Nelson Cruz. Like, who am I? Guy who shouldn't have even tried out for Cal State Fullerton. But I remember one time, I don't know why I did this. Oh, I do know, because I'm a jerk. Like, Nelson. Oh, you know what? This is what he did. He Cadillac something, and he was popping off.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, you're popping off pretty much for a guy who blew the World Series against the Cardinals. Nice route on that ball. And you can see his shoulders slump. And I'm like, that really hurt him. Yeah. But you know what? He didn't act like a jerk the next time he came to Anaheim. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Wouldn't be the first outfielder for the Rangers to screw something up. Josh Hamilton on that down the stretch against the Oakland A's and totally lollygagged that ball hit to him. Yeah.
We had, and then the adventures of Jose Canseco back in the day.
Oh my gosh.
That was some fun times when he was playing for, I have a lot of respect for A's fans, and I feel for them with everything that they've got going on in their lives right now. But that A's team was so loathsome. Loaded and loathsome all at the same time.
Yeah.
But loaded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, I remember the 88 World Series and being like, at least one of these teams is going to lose. And I'm going to take great delight in it. Yeah. I remember rooting for the Mets. Can we just have the Mets? Because the Mets should beat the A's. Oh, the Mets blew it.
Yeah.
Where did the shift come for you working in playing, being around baseball, working for a Dodgers affiliate, to the shift to go into NFL?
It was a fortunate circumstance, because I was really willing to go out and work in baseball. And again, you don't typically get rich doing it. You're not going to make a lot of money in baseball, and it's 162 games compared to the NFL 16. So yeah, when I was in college at Cal State Fullerton and I applied for an internship with the NFL, I knew I got a connection. Hey, here's somebody's name that you should send a resume to. And they contacted me, said, hey, do you want to come out and try out for an internship? We got that available. I'm like, yeah, of course, I'll do whatever. Thankfully, the person who was doing the interview process, his name is Chuck Garrity, and he was an old LA Times guy, and I had just happened to be covering high school sports for the LA Times back in the day when they had the Orange County edition. And it was great because Dan Albano, who's still at the Register, he was the only one that went and did the Register. The rest of us took the LA Times money because it was $10 more a game, which in college, that's significant. Because you would do
six-pack.
You do 3 a weekend. Well, think about this. I didn't have anything going on. I would cover a game Thursday, Friday, Saturday, try to get a Tuesday water polo game. Well, then that's an extra $40 just for that. But then when I went in for my interview, Chuck was like, oh, you work for the LA Times. Do you know this person? And we did 20 minutes of do you know? And then he was like, okay, that's cool. And I'm like, that's the interview? You don't need to know anything else? He's like, And I'm like, all right. So I walked out, and then he called me about a week later and said, hey, do you want to come do this? And so I'm like, yeah, of course. This is, I wanted to work in sports. I was doing whatever it was, whatever you could do to get into it, and trying to reach out. I loved radio. I'm sure you remember Steve Hartman, the Loose Cannon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I love listening to the Loose Cannons, Jim Rome. And I would bother all the PR people from every team in Southern California. The only one who wasn't cool was John Black of the LA Lakers, for probably an appropriate reason. But he was like, no, there's no hope for you ever working for the Lakers. You're like, okay, well, thanks for at least letting me know. Like, that's okay. I'm okay. But yeah, I got to know like a lot of the PR people and all that stuff and just trying to knock on the door. Fortunate that it's the NFL because it gives me, a lot of off time. It allows me to sit here and root for the Angels and just go to baseball games to enjoy them. Because that was probably the toughest thing, especially the minor leagues games are fun. Like Chuck, you know this.
Yeah.
And they're a blast. And I would sit there and I'd see people on a Wednesday night when we'd have our dollar drink promotion. And you're like, oh God, like a night, like even a nice night for San Bernardino, like a nice night sitting out there in this little porch, watching baseball, drinking dollar beers. I'm like, I can get used to that. So, so that was the toughest part, but people always ask me that. And like the NFL is the best one to work for because there's less games. People really love it, but it does allow me opportunities to follow other sports. Whereas if I'm in baseball, I'm like, that season never ends.
Yeah.
Here's a name for you going back. You mentioned Steve Hartman. How about let me quickly put topics on the table?
Hacksaw
Hamilton.
Here's what's going on in the world of sports. Here's what's happening on a Thursday.
Yeah, I love it.
The worst wig in sports media. That thing was really bad.
Wait, did Steve Geoff have a wig? Because I remember looking at that mugshot back in the day in the register. I'm like, that's gotta be a wig. I had a friend, I had a friend who lives in Denver who was like, and we were doing like as kids, we're doing blogs and stuff. And I go, hey, check out this guy from my local newspaper. Like, what do you think of this guy's hair? And he's like, oh my God. It's like, that's such a toupee. Like, it's gotta be, right? Like there's no way around this.
Oh my God.
So as an Angels fan, for a long period of time, going back into the 90s and, having, through the aughts, really great time, won the World Series in 2002, strong for another 10 years. And now we've had a decade plus of just, misery.
Yeah.
What are you thinking of the team, the way that they're looking right now, developing, building some of the new talent that they have coming up? Are you feeling hopeful, optimistic, or do you feel like this is just more of the same and we're in store for another 5 to 10 years of disappointment?
No, I think Chuck was mentioned it right off the top where it's like, this does remind me of the teams that I was drawn to. Of like being able to go to games for an affordable price, sit wherever. Now I get the enjoyment of bringing my kids to it and really just trying to live into the moment of like, are we winning today? Because with both of my kids, if the Angels win, we go out to the All-Star Mickey Mouse and we take a photo. And if we lose, we don't take the photo. So they have like there's a little rooting incentive, but both my kids they want the Angels to win.
Yeah.
So that's not a big thing. But I do like the process of building, and I do love watching them come along and putting the pieces together. Now we live in a society that would not have liked even because even the 80s, you could start like after the team was dismantled and they started putting it together. It was kind of a long process. So you think about like they get salmon out of college. Was it College of the Grand Canyon?
Grand Canyon.
Right? Yeah. Ersatz came out of Nebraska. Yeah. Go Lopes. Don't mean to disrespect the Lopes. GA was a local. So you're like, okay, like we're starting to see. Percival played at UCR, of course.
That's right.
You're starting to see it. And you're like, okay, starting to put it together. And my friend and I were talking about this the other day. My friend Matt, who's the biggest Angels fan I know. And it's like, God, Twitter would have killed the Angels in the 90s.
Oh, gosh.
Well, especially the 95 season, but like the bill, and especially with like the Mo Vaughn thing. How many rings does he have over there? Like, I almost wish that Ohtani was more of that way to like really light the fire, like really, really put them in the bad guy spot. But he's too nice. He's too gracious.
I know.
And I still love him. I can't root against him. I didn't realize that he's good because I've muted him out of social media.
I did too, but
well?
he still appears on my timeline.
I try. Well, unfortunately, and listen, I like Ben, and I would consider him a friend, and I'm sure I'm going to help Justin draft his team here in a couple of days. I can't deal with it. I'm like, nah, dude, you're ruining. You almost ruined it for me as an Angels fan, and now that he's with the Dodgers, it's even worse. But I really like the way that it's coming together, and the people who are critical of it, like, how this isn't the NFL. Like, how quickly do you think this is going to turn around? Like, how quickly is the process? Like, if you think about this, and this is what my friend Matt and I were talking about, is like, the minor league rankings don't mean anything to me because we always said that, like, if we would have just signed a bunch of random veterans and kept O'Hoppe, Neto, Nolan, and all those guys down in the minor leagues, would you feel better about your life? Because you're like, well, we have all these prospects, or we get to see them on the major league level. And it certainly hasn't hurt Neto's development, who's way back. Oh gosh, I've been like, not like, to my friends who root for the Yankees, like they're now starting to hear it because early in the season when they were playing, like, Neto's okay. I'm like, Neto's okay. Like, he's better than your guy. And it will be proven this season. Like, it will be at the end of the year and it's going to be definitive. Like, it's not even, Volpe's not, no, nobody will consider Volpe a better player. I guarantee it. Like, it's just not happening. And I also, like, people are like, oh yeah, I was describing Neto. I'm like, you know what? I go, Neto, like, if you've never seen him, he's kind of like a Derek Jeter who can field his position. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like that kind of, that's what he reminds me of.
Yeah.
A good fielding Jeter. Although it does remind me a little bit of, there's a little Pedroia there. And I'm like, it makes me uncomfortable to think about it. And I'm like, because there was not a baseball player I disliked more, I think, than Dustin Pedroia.
Yeah.
By the way, Dustin Pedroia, he's at ASU with a metal bat and hits like 6 home runs a year. Then he goes to Boston and hits 30.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what? No, hold on. Like, are we not, what? And it's the same, and it happens with the Dodgers too. You're like, they take journeymen who are almost out of baseball. Justin Turner, almost out of baseball. Like, oh, now you're hitting 40 home runs?
Yeah.
Max Muncy, now you're hitting what?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? I'm like, okay, like, I guess we're not testing for anything. Okay, it's just curious.
Yeah. You know, to your earlier point, Adam, like when you mentioned how the Angels aren't ranked very highly, you know, in terms of their farm system, right? I would argue that if you looked at those 90s teams where we had Salmon and Garrett Anderson and Jim Evans come out, and Damian Easley and all those guys, they weren't ranked very highly either, but look what they were able to develop with those guys, right? And they became stars for the Angels and contributors, you know, and Troy Personal, you know, in the World Series. So, you know, the hell with the rankings.
It doesn't matter. Like, how good was Craig Jeffries? How good was Clint Hurdle?
Right.
I think you could argue, and I know a friend of mine, God, geez, these days are running together. I can't even think of people's names now. But one of my friends who's a sports writer, he also teaches with me at Chapman, and he's been doing a lot of TikToks, and he talks about, like, Greg Jeffries, like the Mets sort of ruined him. So that's not fair, but like that, but it just goes to show you, like, there was a Brian Taylor, like you think of like these prospects that come, even Mickey Moniak, you know, like what he had to go through in Philadelphia and their organization, like, you never know. And the rankings don't matter. Like I've seen plenty of people fail, like even like Dallas McPherson for us, you know, and Brendan Wood for us, like, none of this matters until they get up here. And I look at Nolan and how well he's playing, and I'm like, okay, I really like his makeup. He's got some things to work on, but it's like, okay, well, that's what he's going to do. He's going to work on it because he gets pounded a certain way. And then, okay, he's got to adjust to that. And when he does, it's going to be over for everybody. Zach Neto went through that. I mean, Zach Neto had to kind of fool around with his leg kick and get that sorted. Logan O'Hoppe had the stretch where he was really struggling, but I think, like, if I have one mild critique for Ron Washington, it was when he kept playing him so much. You're like, okay, I know he's a young kid,
Right.
And he's built like early or late 80s Lex Luger, but let's dial it back just a touch and let him go out and do his thing.
He should have DH'd a little bit more.
Obviously, I think Christian Moore will be pretty good. I know the last game I checked, he was 1 for 5.
Yeah.
I still think he's above 300 there down at Rocket City. And I think Adele is good. And I think like some of the, we need some of those pitchers to come through. But remember, like everybody was ready to write off Ben Joyce. When Ben Joyce was this year, like all he can do is throw fastballs.
Right.
And you're like, give it a second. Like, let him, like, hold on. And then he develops that little wrinkle. And now he's unhittable. And now he's our guy that you're like, oh, like this is.
Sign him long term. Lock him up.
Caden Dana is going to be like that. And now, and I don't want to jinx it, but excuse me.
Knock on wood.
Our boy Reed Detmers.
He's coming back.
Starting to look good. And I know that
back next week.
Yeah. He'll be back next week. It'll be awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So if you were to make a comparison between the Angels over the last 10 to 15 years and an NFL team, who are the Angels in the National Football League?
The last 10 to 15 years. Oh, I'll just go with it. I'll go Chiefs, who are, you know what? Like they get a second-hand coach.
But the Chiefs have won 3 Super Bowls.
Now we know what the Chiefs are like. But when they were like, you don't have to go back to the too distant past and look at what everybody was saying when they drafted Patrick Mahomes, being like, oh, what a mistake this is. Like, what a dumb team this is. Like, there are people who are like, oh, I'm so glad the Giants. I'm a Giants fan. I'm glad we didn't take Patrick Mahomes. I think the Angels could be there. I know that everybody hates Artie, and they haven't. He hasn't really given them a good reason not to. And again, if my complaint with him, which I would say to his face, is like, why? And he said this. I thought he was going to ask for $400 million, and maybe that's what he thought it was going to be, and was going to be more palatable. But at the same time, it's like, you had somebody who was willing to buy the team. When the Rams moved to St. Louis, Georgia Frontiere didn't have the money for that. And the NFL owners were trying to fine her so much money that it made it impossible for her to move. But she joined forces with Stan Kroenke. Stan Kroenke was the minority owner of the Rams through the rest of Georgia Frontiere's life until she passed away. And then Stan had the opportunity to purchase the team, which he did. And it came down to the last day. People don't remember this story, but Shad Khan, who owns the Jags right now, was going to buy the Rams because his family had a lot of interest in St. Louis as well. And then on the last day, Kroenke's like, no, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to exercise my right to overtake it and do all this stuff. And I don't know if they were doing that to get Shad vetted so he could buy the Jags eventually. But in any event, like he could have done that and been like, okay, like whomever wants to buy the team or be whatever, bring on a minority partner, let that person or that entity have 40% of the team. So you don't have to worry about some of the things that have held back the organization, like not investing enough in scouting, developing the training facility out in Tempe a little bit more. Like if it were like, I wish we had a rich enough guy to go out there and get a plot of land in the Coachella Valley, build a training facility out there, and then have that team join the California League. And whether it's Palm Springs or not, but like bring back the Palm Springs Angels type of thing. Like that's what I wish Artie would kind of do that. So for me, I wish there was a bigger investment that way, but bringing back Perry, I think, was a huge deal. I think that he's kind of like erasing a lot of the mistakes that Epler made and DePoto made, and he's really trying to put them on a track to have long-term success. Because you see like the prospects starting to prop up. That takes so long. And so for the Angels, it's almost been a full tank job. Like we're already pulling up one of the kids that we got from the Estevez trade. He's gonna start on Saturday, right?
Friday,
if I'm not mistaken. So I'll see one of them
tomorrow.
So it's like, it's getting there. And it's in this microwave society, it's not good. It's going to take a little bit of time. Chiefs might be a little bit aggressive because Chiefs did have some success with Alex Smith.
Oh man, I was going to take that.
But who's a bad? I'm trying to think of like a bad team that's all of a sudden really good. I think we might be in our Carolina Panthers stage, where nobody likes the Carolina Panthers owner. Bryce Young looked like a mistake, but they did some good things in the offseason to try to rectify that. They brought in Deontay Johnson. They're rebuilding the offensive line from the guard position out. We should see some tangible evidence of it this season, and then hopefully in the future they'll be on the right path. I think that's more of a expectation for the Angels right now, which is not a great one, but I think it's fair.
There you go.
Take it.
Chuck?
Well, what I was going to say, I was going to think like the Chicago Bears. I was thinking the Chicago.
I've lost. Wait, hold on.
We still got you.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you.
I got you. I was thinking the Chicago Bears. I mean. That
was too easy.
Who's
our Caleb?
I tried to put it on a tee for you. Well, that's the question, right? Is it
we don't
Hoppy? Is it Neto?
Yeah, I mean, like I see a lot of it. We need that Caleb. We do. Cool. As much as I love O'Hoppy, and as much as I know Neto, and I'm not enough of a draft nick now to know. I know the Angels are in play for the number 1 overall selection.
Maybe we'll get the Holiday kid.
Is that the one? Yeah, I'm trying to think of his name.
Yeah,
if we get Holiday, then that Bears analogy works perfectly.
Yeah,
and we're going through a lot of process. Yeah, the Bears do. There is a lot of similarities. But people, I guess people don't like the Hallis family. I do. As an NFL employee, I love the Hallis family. Just for the record, just make sure everybody says that. But there is that. That's why I didn't think of the Angels. There isn't quite a Caleb there, but there's a Montez Sweat, there's a DJ Moore, stuff like that. If we get our Caleb, then I will make that perfectly. I should have thought of that.
Maybe the Lions.
Oh God, yeah. When I was thinking of a team that was really bad, yeah. If we could just, and again, you don't want to get too excited. But if Dana comes out and pitches really well, I'm going to be a menace online. Like I'm just not going. I'm going to be like, listen, this is what we play for. This is what we're talking about. And I know that other teams have had some success. See, to me, because it's funny, the easiest comparison is I always look at the Dodgers and I look at the Packers. There's two organizations that you're like, they're so similar. The Packers are more Dallas Mavericks to me, but they're all in that same thing of like good, should be better, should win more, and then don't. And people are be like, well, you'd love to be in the Dodgers position. I'm like, the Angels were. Do you not remember the 2000s?
Yeah, they
were.
were.
That's exactly. The only difference is we won a full season World Series. You guys didn't.
Yes.
And I always say this too, like, and all the Dodger fans get upset. Like, well, I'm like, don't. I go, okay, let me ask you a question. Did you celebrate a title? Because I made the joke. I said the Dodgers are having a ceremony. This was back in May or April. I said, by the way, I told a couple of my coworkers who are Dodger fans, like, hey, are you guys going to the ceremony tonight? Like, oh, what do you mean? I go, they're having a ceremony. Like, for what? I'm like, they're celebrating their Cactus League title. Because I thought you guys celebrated every title that wasn't a real World Series. Like, duh, we had the same. I'm like, hey, listen, everybody in the Cactus League has the same opportunity to win games. I would even reason that it's harder to win a Cactus League title. Winning a Cactus League title is actually more difficult than winning an actual World Series. Listen, put a like Cactus League World Champions on a sweatshirt. Dodger fans would buy that with no shame. They'd be happy to wear it. Look at us. If Dodger fans were actually like more into their team, they would recognize, like, we're Cactus League champions. They don't know what the Cactus League is, though. Like, oh, you know when you guys go out to Arizona and drink for a weekend and black out, wondering why Shohei Ohtani's not playing? Like, there was a Dodger fan who was like, do you think he'll win Rookie of the Year? And I'm like, yep, he's going to win Rookie of the Year.
Again,
listen, and that's the thing. Like, people say that about Angel fans all the time. I'm like, if you're still rooting for us through this stuff, you can't help but be considered a fan. Like, you know it. And that's why I always like to tweet out to Wayne and Mark and Erica and Patty O, just to let them know that somebody's watching. Like, your efforts are not in vain, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. We're with you still. We're enjoying this. And I know, like, you want to win. You want to win. You want to go out there. You want to be competitive. 2000s were great. But this is kind of like the stress-free, like, just enjoying, like, hey, you know what? Zach Neto went 4 for 5. We lost 14-6. I don't care. Like, we had a good day. Like, our players are developing. Like, they're getting better. And that's sometimes all you can really ask for.
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. Well, Chuck, should we make the shift over to some football? So Chuck is in the last 4 years of the AngelsWin Fantasy Football League, I have won 2 years. I won 2020 and 2021. Chuck is the defending champion. He won last year. But as our listeners and those watching on YouTube are kind of prepping for their office fantasy pool, or the leagues that they're getting into with their friends and family, what are some of your thoughts going, or your the way that you approach fantasy? Do you have a philosophy of who you target first and who you look at? And I was telling Chuck earlier today, Peyton Manning ruined it for me in the like 2012 through 2015, because I would draft him first. So I was drafting a quarterback first in my fantasy league because he was putting up these, Star Wars numbers. And I've kind of kept that. Right. But I know that philosophically, a lot of people don't necessarily get behind that as the way to go. How do you approach fantasy football drafts for yourself, for your shows that you have? What's kind of your outlook on those?
It's interesting because so many of the people who create content for fantasy football are doing it for an audience of like sharps, and they're trying to impress the other fantasy people instead of really helping out traditional random fantasy players. It's kind of listening to a comic who's trying to make the other comics in the back of the room laugh, and not really concerned about making their audience laugh.
The people that pay to get in.
The people who are actually paying to get in, because people will do that all the time. Like, well, there's a lot of sharps, and like, that's really that's not the people who are watching the NFL Network. I mean, I will try to appease to all people and try to make this as wide ranging as possible and find some deep sleepers for you. But ultimately, I want to deal with the people who are like, you're in a house league. Like, because even for me, there was a time a couple of years ago where I was playing with what I would consider my league of record, the league I worry about the most, with my friends who live in Corona, California still. And I was having trouble with this league, and I was really trying to do a deep dive of why am I losing? And so it's interesting because the first thing I noticed is that our commissioner had weighted the quarterback scoring so much towards good quarterbacks. 6 points for a passing touchdown, bonuses for 300, 400 yards. That you're like, okay, so for somebody who is subscribing to the philosophy of the sharps of like, ignore a quarterback until you need to, that really doesn't help. And we're playing in a league where you play just 2 running backs, 2 receivers in a flex instead of 3 receivers in a flex, which means your quarterback does make a huge difference. So Geoff, in your league, like, it probably, even if you went into the kind of league that I'm in with my friends and we play with the two running backs, 2 receivers, a flex, you would want it. You have to have a good quarterback to win. Yeah. You can't, it's not going to be one of those things where you're like, I want a league with Tim Tebow or Matt Moore was my starting quarterback and I got to wait. No, you have to have an elite level quarterback, because the margin of victory is so small that you can't get away with like, well, my quarterback threw just one touchdown this week. That's just not going to get it done. So my initial thing, when anybody's like, what's the biggest tip that I could give you? Who should I draft first? It's like, you have to understand your scoring system, the roster construction, and all those other parameters, because everybody's talking in generalities. They're like, hey, like Zamir White's a good player, but like, what does that mean? There's some leagues that I have where you start only one running back. We have 3 flex spots, and it's PPR. So it's like, well, you need a running back that catches the football. We don't need Derrick Henry. We need somebody who catches the football.
Yeah.
You got to go through and kind of understand that and sort of develop your philosophy that way. And I play in so many different leagues that it's like every time I'm doing a draft, I get a moment of panic about 15 minutes right before it starts. Like, oh my God, what are the scoring settings? And I'm like looking through like PPR, half point PPR, how many running backs, can I flex a tight end? Is this a thing? Because I got caught in a league where I drafted 2 tight ends because I had Dalton Kincaid, and I'm like, well, shoot, nobody's drafting Kyle Pitts. I'll take him. I'm like, oh, I can't flex him. So now he's just going to be a bench piece. So that is that to me, like, you will put yourself in the playoffs if you base your philosophy on your own personal league and not listening to anybody from the NFL Network or Yahoo or ESPN or anything like that. You've already set yourself ahead of everybody else because nobody else in your league is paying attention to that. Nobody bothers to look. Like they're not that, most people aren't that invested. So you're already giving yourself a huge advantage right there. You just want to make the playoffs, get into the championship game to get your money back, and then just go about it that way. Like my friends in another league, somebody was about to run their mouth on me. Like, when was the last time you won this league? And he was correct. It's been a long stretch, but he's like, I've been the runner up 7 out of the last 8 years. And he's like, I don't have anything to say, because he's like, that's pretty consistent. Like, you're consistent. But it's just because I understand the league. And it's like, yeah, like I normally wouldn't take Patrick Mahomes, and I wouldn't normally be a quarterback first type of person, but it's like, well, in this league, it's important. And I was for years taking Mahomes and Kelsey and just riding those 2 guys to the finals and losing, but still making it to the final. I was getting my money back. That's all I can really ask for. So that's the number one thing. And then just draft at that point. Just go out and draft. I'm a little apprehensive though about Christian McCaffrey right now. I'm getting
the injury.
As the weeks are, and it's not about him. It's about Trent Williams. And I was thinking about it today, and I'm like, gosh, that guy's held out before. He's 33. He probably doesn't need to deal with this. Probably doesn't even want to play. And last year in the 2 games when Trent Williams didn't play, that offense looked awful. Yeah. So I'm like, this is kind of important.
He's kind of the consensus number 1 pick too in fantasy drafts right now.
Yes. And now people are hedging on that. And it's
getting back to your thing, Geoff, and drafting the QBs and then winning back-to-back, which is crazy, Adam, is our league is 4 points for touchdowns for QBs and no bonus points for 300 yards or 400 yards. So even then, Geoff still won the league.
Pretty sharp. He's the true sharp right there. Yeah. Starting yourself off in a hole. Yeah, you're leading. It's a Joe Madden leading off with the pitcher type of situation.
Yeah, right. I have an opener as I. So you have this league with your friends from Corona that you've been in for a long time. Any cool leagues that you're in with the folks from the NFL Network there, or there's some good shit talking that goes around that you guys have within the office?
They don't like hanging out with us because we're too much. We dominated too much, and so people sort of stay away. That was our own fault. Like we kind of brought this upon ourselves by like going in there, like in a league with Scott Hansen, and we're embarrassing him, and then it's like that. He doesn't want to deal with that. Like he can go out and play with other randos and be like, "Oh, look at me," but then like Marcus and I show up, and it's like, well, now you're starting off third, so It's not really fair. So that was the problem. We've been kind of shunned, and then today on today's show, which will be it's happening right now. On today's show, we really went after Kyle Brandt. They did this thing on their show, and I'm like, and I went up to their producer. I said, was this a real thing? Like, is this a snake draft? It's like, yeah. And I'm like, he really took Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp over Amon-Ra St. Brown. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, we got to talk about this. I go, we're talking about this on our show. I'm so sorry.
We're leading with this.
Yeah, we really did. And our producer was like, hey, like, be cool, like, don't cause too many waves. It's like, which is true, because like Kyle Brandt has so much juice. Like he didn't get moved out from New York for Good Morning Football. He was able to stay out there. Whereas me, they'll be like, yeah, we can find anybody to talk this. Like, get out of here. But there was an incident a couple of years ago where Marcus had done, and Marcus shared this in the production meeting, and he goes, yeah, a couple of years ago, these guys, like, and they didn't bring Marcus on the show. They just talked about it. Like, Marcus has Aaron Rodgers at QB 13. Like, this is Aaron Rodgers. Does he even know? Like, how is this possible? Like, all this stuff. The end of the season, Aaron Rodgers finished QB 13. And so, so we were sitting there. So Marcus told that story today. And then our producer was like, oh, fuck him. Yeah, go get him. Go get him. Get him, Rank. And I'm like, I'm in. I'm the man for the job.
That's great.
So Adam, Geoff is a Broncos fan. I'm a Seahawks fan.
I love the Broncos this year.
Yeah.
I love
Let's go.
Are we doing this?
We're doing this.
All right.
It's time. It's time to show our football colors.
All right. I don't
get this thing in here.
So Chuck is a big Seahawks fan.
Oh boy.
I'm a Broncos fan.
Yeah.
So we got a big week 1 coming up. How do you see that one playing out?
How was the Super Bowl for you guys?
Oh, it was.
I enjoyed it.
I
loved it.
It was better.
I'll be honest with you. I'm not necessarily a huge Peyton Manning fan, which is hilarious because people would be like, why are you always writing Peyton Manning all the time? Like, why do you take shots at him? Why do you talk S on him? Like, what did he ever do to you? And you're like, okay, what team did Peyton Manning play for? Like the Colts and Broncos. I'm like, okay, who did the Colts most recently beat in the Super Bowl? And then they look like Andy Garcia at the end of Ocean's 11 when he realized he was watching his vault being ripped off on videotape. Like, does it say Bellagio on the floor? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I remember I was at that Super Bowl at MetLife Stadium. I was standing next to one of the KOA guys, and it's very tough for me to be so pro Seahawks because the Mariner fans are the worst. Like,
I hate Mariner fans. 100%.
The worst. Like how do Mariner fans not root for the Seahawks? I got to imagine that. Let me think that. But I remember sitting there and I'm you know what? Like Peyton Manning's probably gonna like first play of the game, and I'm like, you know what? I go, it would be such a Manning thing to throw a pick 6 here. Then the ball goes over his head. I'm like, or that. I go, congratulations on your Super Bowl. There's no place. Peyton Manning, I will say this too. I always joke around because they're like, who's the best quarterback to never win a Super Bowl? And I go, Peyton Manning. Like, what? I'm like, well, I go, Rex Grossman gifted him one, and then Von Miller carried him to another. He was on 2 Super Bowl winning teams. I would not contend that he won them.
So for me, I think, Geoff, you're a Broncos fan because you moved from Southern California, right?
So I grew up a Rams fan, and when the Rams moved to St. Louis, I was like, screw this. I'm not going to. My allegiance doesn't follow them. So then, 20 years ago when I moved to Colorado, it was like, well, when in Rome. And
why not?
Yeah.
Great fan. By the way, great fans.
Mm-hmm.
I really hate telling that Peyton Manning story because I like the Broncos fans. I really do. And I really like their team this season. I think they're a team that's building something. And I think Bo Nix is going to be pretty nice. Cortland Sutton has been one of my favorite guys to grab in fantasy recently, especially now Tim Patrick's gone. Jerry Jeudy's obviously in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many balls that Jaleel McLaughlin is going to steal away, but Dulcich is also a pretty good option. So I think Denver can be pretty sneakily good this year.
What are your thoughts on Bo Nix? Is he ready?
No, I like him. You know what? It was interesting because talking to a couple of the scout people, they were saying that he's kind of a taller, and not that Drew Brees wasn't athletic, but like a taller, more athletic Drew Brees, the kind of quarterback that Sean Payton really likes. and can really help mold. And he's been around forever. I mean, he was a college rival of Justin Herbert, so he had a lot of time in the minors, so to speak, developing his game, and now comes to the NFL ready to go. And I really believe that he's going to take off in week one. I feel the long-term future for the Seahawks will be good. I think Byron Murphy was a good pick. I love Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Oh yeah.
DK Metcalf. The only problem is I like the story of Geno Smith, but I do know that Dave Canales left 2 years ago. Geno goes from 30 to 20 touchdowns. Now Waldron's gone. Even Pete Carroll will never be given the credit for what he did to develop quarterbacks during his time at USC. 2 of his quarterbacks won Heisman trophies. Sam Darnold was a top pick. Mark Sanchez was a top pick. He did a great, and then Russell Wilson. He was able to take a third rounder who transferred and flirted with baseball, took him to what should have won 2 Super Bowls. So I don't think that Pete gets enough credit for how well he develops quarterbacks. And so while I like Mike McDonald and what he was able to do at Michigan, 1 year of the NFL with Baltimore, which was great for him, it might take a little bit of time, but I think Seattle will get there. But I think they're going to struggle a little bit more this season than people anticipate.
Wow. Okay.
And how are you feeling about your Bears? What do you think that you're looking at as a realistic season for them? And then also, what is the top end that they could do this season? I think a lot of people have been, kind of locked in. People tend to get locked in with the teams that are the hard knocks. It's like you watch that show and then you're invested in them for the season. So I have a little bit of that going into the season.
Oh, a lot of people feel that way too. And the one great thing about them is having Caleb Williams surrounded by so much talent that is not normally given to a number 1 overall selection. People need to understand too, it was not their number 1 overall pick. It was the Carolina Panthers' number 1 overall pick. The Bears actually won 7 games, and they had 3 contests where they had over a 90% chance of winning in the fourth quarter, and they blew it. Some of them because of the quarterback play, maybe a coaching gaffe at one other spot too. But okay, so now you got a really talented team who brings in not only Caleb Williams, but Roma Dunze. And now for me, I think a realistic goal would be double-digit wins, flirting, perhaps making the playoffs. But in my crazy mind, I would say this. If there was any cosmic justice for the Bears in this one, it would be for them to go to the Super Bowl, finally get their quarterback, and the team that they beat to be the New York Jets so they could beat Aaron Rodgers to win the Super Bowl. I want, that is it. If they were you get one, you get to book the Super Bowl this year. I said, this is my crazy booking. I would pitch to the booking committee. Caleb Williams and the Bears beat Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl. Who says no? That is one of the best. That would be one of the best WrestleMania storylines of all time. So I'm like, let's go with that. It makes too much sense.
Yeah.
I like it. Are you still doing comedy, and do you have any shows coming up that we can promote for you?
I don't have any shows coming up. I tend to spend most of my time doing the NFL Fantasy Live and all that stuff. Okay. But our mutual friend Adam Dodge hosts a show once a year.
Yep.
Which is always a lot of fun. So that always kickstarts my comedy season. Because then you do a show and he brings in outside of me, he brings in real comics. And then every one of those guys is like, I've got a show here. Can you come do it? And then once you start doing shows, then you go I got a room in Huntington Beach. Come by on Monday night. I got a place in Placentia. Come by on Tuesday. You're like, okay. And then you just kind of fill out your calendar and you go out and you do your thing. But once we hit August, I kind of dial that back and go into the lab and spend a little bit more time with the football stuff.
Gotcha. We have a text group with Adam that we were kind of talking last night because you were coming on. We were talking about Orange County comedians. Is Brad Williams someone that you know? And I think that I've seen that he's an Angels fan as well.
I've met him. I think he is an Angels fan.
Okay.
I've performed with him back at the last time I saw him was the Irish Mist, which is actually leveled now in Sunset Beach. But I think he's an Angels fan. If I remember correctly, but yeah, he's hilarious. He's
good. Yeah. We need to try to get him on.
Geoff, we got to make it down for Adam's.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
it'd be nice if Adam invited us. I mean, that would be a good start.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Well, he will. He will now.
Right.
Now that we've shamed him on this show. Yeah.
Yeah. Chuck, any final questions?
So, word has it you do a really good. What's the comedian's name again?
Norm McDonald.
Norm McDonald impersonation.
Oh no.
Adam Dodge may have leaked that to us last night.
Oh, he leaked it. Like, oh yeah, back in the day. So let me tell you this story about this guy, this farmer. He had this shaggy dog. And everybody used to go, oh, that dog. Why do you have that mangy butt? And this farmer, he's like, oh, I tell you what, I'm gonna enter this dog into a dog show. I'll show them. So he goes down to the local dog show, and the dog goes, and holy Lord, the dog wins. Oh, wow. He goes, oh, you're going to go to the county fair. Oh, wow. County fair. And, he goes to the county fair, and he goes, hey, holy Lord, dog wins again. He's like, oh, the good fortune of this shaggy dog that nobody thinks is good. They call it a mangy mutt, and so then, he goes up and he's like, all right, so now he's going to the Tri-County Fair, and so he's trying, this dog's got everybody tells him, your dog's got no chance there in the Tri-County Fair. Oh, sure enough, this dog, it wins the Tri-County Fair, quite an accomplishment. Now he's going to the state fair at the state capitol, and he goes and, he goes to the state capitol, he goes, and everybody's like, oh, don't go, you're just going to embarrass yourself. It's like, no, I'm going to go, you got to commit me, this dog's the winner. He goes to the state finals. And lo and behold, the dog wins again. Holy Lord, like how is this dog still winning? And he goes up, he goes up to the national finals. He goes up and people are like, oh, this dog's not going to win or whatever. He goes in, wins the state finals, He goes on, and then it's the national championship. And he goes to the national championship, and the judges are sitting there looking, and the judge looks at this dog and goes, oh yeah, that dog's not so great. By the way, that's the short version.
Oh my God.
I kept that going at one of our fantasy drafts. I kept that going for 5 minutes. It went from city, county, state, tri-state, western region, country, hemisphere, and like the whole thing, and then the punchline. And it was just the dumb Norm McDonald thing of like no punchline. Like, no, that dog's not so great.
My God. God love him. I miss Norm.
I do too.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a lot of fun.
No, I really appreciate it. I've always secretly wanted to come on. So
good.
This was a pretty special occasion. I gotta tell you, a lot of people call up and they go, hey, we need you on the show, and they're like, oh, now because it's no. But normally for a lot of people, I would have been like, football season? Are you kidding me? I'm not gonna. No, I cleared the schedule, make sure we got this going. So really appreciate it, and I didn't look at any of the comments when we're going because I'm emotionally fragile. And it's good. I got out of here without having to discuss any beef with other media personalities who might cover the Angels. So I feel pretty good about that.
We'll have you back on.
Yeah, you know what? We'll definitely have you back on. And Adam even wanted to maybe come on with you too, and we can get the four of us together.
Let's do it. Yeah, I would love that.
You and Adam can tell jokes, and Chuck and I will sit back and laugh and drink.
My face will hurt. Yeah, like right now. Wow.
All right. Well, everyone, for Chuck Richter and Adam Rank, thank you so much again for joining us. My name's Geoff Stoddart. This has been episode 43 of the Angels Win Podcast. Good night now.
Thanks for listening to the AngelsWin.com podcast with Chuck Richter and Geoff Stoddart. Until next time, go Halos.